Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, where you can find shows like Embrace Debate and Inside the Vault, empowered by the Fans First Sports Network. I am Ryan Frick, one of your co-hosts, and we got the whole gang back together again for this show in Shannon Smith and Michael Davis. Fellas, how we doing today?
Good. Not so great with this Sunday. Good as we can be.
Mike, how about you, man? I know you had a good weekend for your non-Panthers fanhood.
Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed this weekend. It helped Dak Prescott in his MVP debate, which I have went back and forth with so many people on. They're legit. They're actually fun to watch. The Panthers, I don't know why I'd prefer watching that Saints game that we're going to talk about later on in the show, or that 3-0 game that we saw out of the Vikings and Raiders, wasn't it?
Terrible.
Both those games were brutal.
Well, what's crazy is that wasn't the only game to go 0-0 into halftime this week.
That's insane.
The Jets and the Texans went to halftime 0-0.
Yep.
What a rough weekend outside of Dallas fans. Listen, you want to talk Dak Prescott MVP? I'll see your Dak Prescott. I'll raise you a Deebo Samuel. Because when Deebo Samuel is on the field for the San Francisco 49ers, the 49ers are an unstoppable force. They are the Andre the Giant meeting King Kong Bundy, whoever might be on the field. Like, it's just, we don't have to talk about it here. This is a Panthers show.
Anytime you have Ryan on a podcast, he'll drop wrestling references, which is pretty good. I approve of those, and Gamecock references. Even though Deebo, he knows Deebo's like the 5th most important player on that offense alone.
I wouldn't say all that right now as a 49 fan. I would not say
McCaffrey.
Oh yeah, CMC is
which
CMC
Panthers let go. Trent Williams, Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy is not more important than Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not.
They're one in the same, right?
Why he's the number 1 49er in the MVP voting right now.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys just hate him because he was drafted last.
But quarterbacks are going to get
top.
They're going to get top billing anyway. Quarterbacks are getting top billing regardless. I mean, look at Tua. Tua's in there.
The series of games when San Francisco was missing Deebo Samuel and partially missing Christian McCaffrey is when they lost 3 games this season. When Deebo's been healthy, they have been unstoppable in offense because you cannot stop both Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. So anyway, listen, we're talking Niners, we talk Cowboys. This is a Carolina Panthers podcast, and so we're gonna talk some Carolina Panthers stuff here. Before we get into the fact that the Panthers once again lost to continue to hold the worst record in the NFL, let's talk about the big news that dropped last week. And I'm not talking about the Joe Person article with Joe Person and Diana Rossini, I should say. I'm talking about the fact that the same day that article dropped, David Tepper and the Carolina Panthers announced that they would no longer be hosting the training camp at Wofford College. Again, the news dropped the same day on a scathing article by The Athletic, Joe Person and Diana Rossini, where they established a culture in Carolina behind the scenes as being a Hunger Games-like culture, where coaches and other staffers were going behind the back to the GM, to David Tepper, to sort of point the fingers at, like Spider-Man style, pointing the fingers at whose fault it was as to why this Panthers team was so bad. Let's start off. Let's talk about the training camp being moving from Wofford College. This was the last real tie that the Carolina Panthers had with the state of South Carolina. I mean, you started the franchise playing the inaugural season at Clemson University. They were originally going to put some facilities, some admin buildings in the Rock Hill area, and that didn't pan out. There are some rumblings about the fact that David Tepper wants to do everything he can to get away from Jerry Richardson, and this is part of the reason why he decided to move it, because Richardson has ties to Wofford College. He's got a statue at Wofford College, and so David Tepper's trying to do everything he can to sort of differentiate himself from Jerry Richardson. Mike, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on the decision to move training camp outside of the state of South Carolina?
Well, it's very interesting when you have a new management in place, right? You said it yourself. He's trying to do everything he can to move on from Jerry Richardson. But I don't know if the Panther fans have actually bought into the way that David Tepper does things. Like, well, now what was the point of moving it from Wofford College? Maybe it's a little closer. Maybe Desmond Johnson doesn't have to travel all the way to Wofford just to get the practice canceled the morning of. He's going to really love that when he watches this back. But this I wouldn't make too much of a deal about it, except the Panthers have so much else to focus on rather than where the training camp is.
Of
Like
course.
that's the whole point, is like we shouldn't be sitting here in December talking about, oh, they moved training camp away from Wofford College. We should be talking, if the season had went as according to plan, how are the Panthers matching up in this race to get the NFC South crown? And now they're the only NFC South team who is not contending for the playoffs because of how they're playing. Like this tried to be a distraction from how terribly the season's going, but in reality, everybody's still realizing this is a season you'll want to forget about if you're a Panthers fan.
Shannon, what say you? What are your thoughts on the training camp moving outside of the state of South Carolina?
First of all, you shouldn't even be talking about training camp in summertime in December, number one. But I believe we all know why David Tepper decided he was going to talk about something like this. He wanted to get everybody over here to not look at what's being done, and that's dropping that article, which I've yet to read, but I'm going to. So the thing about it is that, like MD said, Carolina is not having the season that they should have. It's a season to forget. It's a season to mourn. But the fact that David Tepper is trying everything that he can to get everybody off track and to stop looking at the squad, how bad the squad is doing, that ought to tell you something. I mean, we can't avoid that. It's an eyesore to Panther fans. It's an eyesore to football fans as well, too. So the fact of the matter is David Tepper trying his hardest to get everybody off the blunder that he's made.
Yeah, listen, I've got really strong opinions about this. There are, I believe, there are 4 teams in the NFL that go. Their team is based off of a state and not a city. If you look at the other NFC South teams, the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina is intended to be the all-encompassing Carolinas. You've got the New York Jets and Giants. Even though they play in Jersey, you've got the Minnesota Vikings, representing an entire state. And of course, I could think about it. I think Carolina's the 4th. So the idea that's being thrown around by some people is there's a potential that David Tepper can not only move move everything out of the state of South Carolina, but now if he really wants to get himself away from Jerry Richardson and the original Panthers, we're going to be the Charlotte Panthers going forward. It's not going to be an all-encompassing South Carolina team. It's going to be the North Carolina Panthers. And so, to me, it's already bad enough with as bad as this team is. The worst team in the NFL. It is quite possibly the worst franchise in the NFL and will be for the foreseeable future. It's not bad enough that the team is this bad. It's not bad enough that the fans don't feel like they're being heard. When the question was asked to David Tepper about the firing on Frank Reich, his response was, "I'll let the media speculate on why I made the move now." Like, it's like he doesn't care about us, and he shouldn't. He's a businessman. The franchise has doubled in value since he took it over, whatever. But this is the ultimate slap in the face for Carolina fans based in the state of South Carolina. Especially fans in the upstate. I mean, it was when it was being toyed around with where the Panthers were going to land. Charlotte was the ultimate landing spot, but you had the inaugural season in the upstate of South Carolina. You're talking about putting admin buildings in Rock Hill. Like, you want this team, you want this fan base to feel unified, and all he did was fracture it by taking it out of South Carolina. Again, we shouldn't be talking about training camp locations in December when there are division races going on, when there are playoff races at hand. But the idea that he dropped this news specifically to take the attention off of the Athletics article by Joe Person and Diana Rossini about the way that this franchise was playing out behind the scenes, it just goes to show what type of owner and what type of person David Tepper is. He's a meddler. He's a businessman. He's ruthless. He doesn't care about the people who are spending the money to support this team. The only way that change will happen is if people stop rooting for this team. People stop financially supporting this team. And he can talk about the fact that David Tepper's brought soccer to and concerts to Charlotte and Bank of America, this, that, and the other. But, like, it's not helping the franchise. It's not helping the fan base. And without a fan base, you don't have – I mean, imagine if everybody just up and stopped going to McDonald's. The thousands upon thousands of restaurants that McDonald's has would go under if you've got nobody spending money in the restaurant. So yeah, I'm really, like, it really got to me when I found out that he was moving training camp away from Wofford, especially because I kind of had the idea, I'm going to go to Wofford next year. I do a Panthers podcast now. I'm going to go check out a day like Des was going to do. And that's sort of out of the question at this point. But listen, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot more to be concerned about. There were reports that a lot of the assistants in this article, there were reports that a lot of the assistant coaches, like I had the idea on this show, were in favor of benching Bryce Young in favor of Andy Dalton, and it was shut down. I mean, again, it was a lot of he said, she said, we think this person be doing this. This is what they're doing wrong, this, that, and the other. I mean, the team is just, it's the epitome of dumpster fire. I mean, does either one of you guys, I'll open you to you, Shannon. I mean, have I said anything that was off base at all?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the assistant coaches and the head coaches not being in sync with each other. And that's the reason why this squad is having the problems that it's having. The front office is not in sync. The coaching staff is not in sync. And that's trickling down to the players. The trickle-down effect is for real in the business world. And that's exactly what's going on. Somebody like David Tepper, if he was what he was, which he makes money. I can't sit around here and knock this man. He's rich. What can I say? But the trickle-down effect is real. The morale is gone. The scheme is gone. You have nothing in there, and these players are not responding in the locker room. And that's what the downfall is. It's just there's no communication. There's no agreeing to disagree. There's no team. There's no teamwork inside. Not just on the field, but in the front office and in the locker room, in the film room, everywhere. There is no team on this team.
Mike, any thoughts on, do you think whether Scott Fitterer returns to the team? Because there's been nothing said publicly about whether or not Scott Fitterer will be back as the GM next year. For all intents and purposes, it feels like the next head coach is going to come in and clean house like they did last year, which is really bad for guys like, Evero and even Jim Caldwell to an extent, especially Thomas Brown. Mike, any thoughts on whether or not Fitterer deserves to come back after this debacle this season?
Dude, I don't know who should come back. I don't know how many people should come back. It is so bad right now. Like, I know we do a Panther podcast, and I know we got to keep it light, but we got to keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Cat Cave, we keep it real. And the real is, it's bad. And it's because there's no continuity. Now, you made a comment last week about Jerry Jones being a bad owner, but Jerry Jones, the one thing about him, he's loyal to guys. He sticks to players. He sticks to coaching staff. Sometimes a little longer. Sometimes I wish Jason Garrett had 3 less years than he actually got. But the fact that you can fire a head coach, like, what was it, like 12 games into a year or less? Like that's what you can't do if you're trying to build an actual winner. And then you have toxicity come into your locker room because you're firing guys prematurely. And now nobody on the coaching staff believes that they're actually coming back next year. I saw on Panthers Twitter this week that Thomas Brown doesn't even believe that he'll be back next year.
Mhm.
So why is he putting in effort? We just saw Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes had a really good showing last year and wasn't hired as the head coach because Tepper won Frank Wright. And that's his right. Okay. No problem with that. But if Wilkes can't, then Thomas Brown can't, Chris Tabor can't, Evero can't. None of these guys can win the job as interim coach or as the coordinators. And so what's the point in trying? Like, if you fire this guy, if you fire that guy, because it's not getting done as quick as you can, now you've set your organization up even further back. And honestly, like, Scott Farrer is probably gone after this year, and they'll bring in a new GM, they'll bring in a new head coach, and they'll have 2 years max.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that he was fired in game 11 or 12, whatever it was. It wasn't just the fact that it was 10, 12 games into a season. It was in his first season. Like, they fired a coach last year and then fired a coach in his first year. It's a moot point. We talked about it on the show. You talked about keeping it real. It's a bad look right now. As a Panthers fan, as someone who lives in the Carolinas or amongst Panthers fans, it's hard. Hard. I don't know how else to put it. It is hard for the fans to be excited about anything when they are this bad. And when it comes to talking about being this bad, the Panthers once again lose another game. They still have one win on the season. And so they lose again to a divisional foe, the Saints, 28-6. Let's take a look at this game that took place over the weekend here. Defensively, they had a strong showing in the first half, and then I think the wheels just kind of fell off. Alvin Kamara averaged 4.7 yards a carry. He got in the end zone. They were talking about at the end of the first half, these teams were having a lot of success running the ball, and it seems like neither team wanted to run the ball. Derek Carr, 119 passing yards. He had 2 passing touchdowns, but he also had an interception when they were trying to throw the ball to end the first half. Shannon, let me go to you. What are your thoughts on the defensive side of the ball here and the Panthers lost to the Saints over the weekend?
Defense was hung out to dry. Simple as that. It's been the constant story for the Panthers. This squad's defense is a good defense. But if you can't manufacture points and keep that defense off the field so much, then it's going to come back to bite you. It's going to come back and get you. One of the things that I really, really enjoyed about the Panthers defense is the fact that they are a squad that gets more than 4 guys to a football. That's one of the things that I like. When you got one guy that's being covered, you got about 4 or 5 Panthers coming to him. They're bringing guys to the football, and that's what they need to do. That's exactly what you're supposed to be as a defense. You bring guys to the football. But when you're being hung out to dry like that, it's hard to do anything. Now, I can't sit back here and shoulder and say that the defense does no wrong. There was some coverage errors. The fact that field position didn't help them at certain points, that was something that really got the defense on another end, is field position didn't work well for them. But the defense, once again, this offense needs to put up points and help this defense, hands down.
Yeah, I mean, again, the defense gave up 28 points. They haven't given up, I don't think, that many points all season. If they did, it was early in the year. But when you talk about offensively, I mean, it's more the same old. Like, the story of this season was supposed to be we need to see improvement, right?
Yes.
We haven't seen improvement. Bryce Young, 137 passing yards on 13 completions, 36 attempts. That's tremendously under 50% completion percentage.
Not good.
Once again, so if you're watching the show on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, you should see a little ticker that comes across the bottom of the screen with stats that come across. For the last 3 to 4 weeks, I have not had to edit anything when it comes to how many times Bryce Young has been sacked, because he is getting sacked 4 times a game. Another 4 sacks in this game. And again, the bright spot, Chuba Hubbard, 3.8 yards a carry at 87 yards rushing. And Miles Sanders averaged 7.4 yards a carry, 10 carries, 74 yards. And then they got Adam Thielen involved in this game again. If you look at the stat line, like, you see the guys that got involved with this offense, you would think it was a decent day. But it wasn't, because we didn't score a touchdown again.
Not one.
And Mike said it a second ago. You I don't even know how to put it again. It's the idea that you can't score touchdowns, you can't complete drives. It's just it's an anomaly. I don't understand it. Like, the coaches have no incentive if none of the coaches feel that they're going to be back. Like, again, he mentioned Panthers Twitter. Thomas Brown doesn't think he's going to be back. Evero doesn't think he's going to be back. If these guys don't think they're going to be back, what incentive do they have to try to make this team better? And I understand they're auditioning for another job next year. Like, I understand that concept. But if, let's hypothetically say your boss came to you in your job and said, "Hey, we're going to move on at the end." Like, let's say they come to you in June and they say, "Hey, come January, we're going to move on to a different person for your position. But we think highly enough of you. We want you to, we wanted to give you enough of a heads up so that you can go find another job." Like, kind of like when we give 2 weeks notice at our jobs when we go to leave, we're giving them giving you 2 weeks to find someone to replace me. If someone gives you 6 months, say, "Hey, we'll give you 6 months to figure it out." Are you going to put in your full effort? No, I'm giving my
50%.
Yeah, I'm my best 50% while I'm out looking for another job.
Right.
Like, I'm I'm sick today. I'm gonna go. I'm at another job interview. So, like, I don't see, like, I don't understand how it got this bad. I really don't.
It wasn't overnight. I know that.
No, it's astonishing to me just how bad the offense looks.
Yes.
I mean, you got to think we're a mere, like, less than a decade away from Cam Newton taking this offense to new heights into a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're on our 5th quarterback in what it seems like 6 years. It might be 4 quarterbacks. I don't even know at this point. But, like, this feels a lot like the Cleveland Browns. It feels a lot like I'm trying to think of the more dysfunctional, the New York Jets prior to the current tenure that they have now. It just, I don't know how else to put it other than just absolutely disappointing. Would you agree?
No, it's constant disappointment. I took Carolina to win this game. Now, Derek Carr did play. And one thing that I did realize in that game is how much of an impact that Alvin Kamara is to that offense. The man ain't played a full season, but yet he's got 60 catches. Can you name anybody from Carolina offhand that's got more than 60 catches?
The only person I would imagine had 60 more catches would have to be Adam Thielen because of how hot he started come week 2. It's the only person I can think of.
That's the only one. So the fact of the matter is, even though he didn't play a full season and, he had his stuff go on in the beginning of the season and all that, that just shows you exactly that the Saints lean on that man a lot. That he's pretty much cornerstone of their squad. It doesn't matter who they play at quarterback. Doesn't matter if it's Jameis. Doesn't matter if it's Derek Carr. Doesn't matter if it's Taysom Hill, who they play at quarterback. Alvin Kamara is getting the ball, and he's going to let you know he's getting the ball, which is one of the things that I look at. He's not shying away at the fact that he's getting the ball. He's trying to stop me. Those guys don't have that mentality. Like, the Panthers don't have that mentality. They do not have the mentality of trying to stop us. I mean, that offensive line can't protect the tricycle more than anything. So you look at that, and the defense is hung out to dry. And, the defense gets exposed because of being tired. So it just shows you that, the morale is leaving very, very slowly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when you look at the stat line. I mean, Kamara had 56 yards rushing. Derek Carr had 119 passing yards. By the way, you mentioned Derek Carr played in this game. I mean, the guy, he got beat up the week before. Like, I don't understand how he came onto the field. So when you look at the stat line, I mean, they were 3 for 10 on third downs. They only had 3 penalties in the game to the Saints. But when you look over at the Panthers, like, it was a matter of extending drives and not getting anything out of them. 8 for 20 on third down, so almost a 50% pop on third down. 1 for 7 on fourth down. And the penalties weren't that bad. 4 penalties for 27 yards. So, like, if you look at the stats alone, it doesn't look that bad.
No.
But when you are giving your opponent opportunities by not converting on third and fourth down, you're going to have scores that look like this, 28-6. Mike, we've done a lot of monopolizing this conversation about the Saints game. What are your overall thoughts on what you saw watching Saints Panthers this past weekend?
Like I said, it was brutal. I had to do one of the multi-views where you can put like 4 games up on the screen, thanks to YouTube TV. And I had the audio on the Saints Panthers game for most of it. Try to flip during commercials and stuff. And it's just, this is rough. There's no other way to say it. And the fact that Derek Carr can get beat up the week before and come back and be like, I don't really fear the Carolina Panthers and what they can do to me, like, that says something. And I'm just like, we're talking about coaches really don't have much confidence that they'll be back. These players need to be playing like they're fighting for their job, because they are.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether it's, fighting for their job in Carolina or fighting for a job elsewhere in the NFL, I think that is the biggest point you can make to these players as to why they need to be playing and they need to be blocking for Bryce Young. One of the ridiculous things is, the Panthers are bad. Okay. They're 1-12. They're winless on the road, but you have quarterbacks like Tommy DeVito who can step in for just as bad of a Giants team and lead their team to victory. You can have the Mayo monster, Will Levis, be down 2 touchdowns and win a primetime game against a playoff team, Miami Dolphins. Like, you have these attributes, and Bryce Young's looking there as the number 1 overall pick, and he's like, why can't I do that? And he can't do it because the offensive line won't block for him. There's no running game. Miles Sanders probably had the best game of his season, as did Hubbard. 87 yards for Hubbard, 74 for Sanders. But they still can't get done because the offensive line won't block. And Bryce Young's throwing scared. Like, he feels like he just doesn't have enough time. When that internal clock is in your head as a quarterback, and that's why he missed the deep shot for a touchdown in that game. Like, these are things that are coming up because of the Panthers' dysfunctionality as a team. And it's tough. It's tough to watch. Next week they have, I believe it's Atlanta next week. And honestly, the Panthers schedule doesn't look good from here on out because they're playing teams who are still fighting for their playoff lives. They're playing the Falcons. They're playing the Packers. They're playing the Jaguars. They're playing the Bucks. Like, all of these teams are fighting for a playoff spot. They have something to fight for, and they're not going to look down at the Panthers coming in as a 1-12 team.
Yeah, to your point, like the players, if the coaches don't have anything to play for, what do the players have to play for? Like, what, you've got a guy, and why, I don't know why I can't say Brian Burns, who's playing without a contract right now. What incentive does he have to even listen to what David Tepper has to say to pay him to come back? Like, who's there to say that all of the skill players on this team come at the end of the season and ask for a trade or an outright release? Because if I'm anybody on this team, I don't want to be here.
Nope.
Who does? There's a reason why Ben Johnson turned the job down last season.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why this coaching search is going to take a long time, because knowing what has been going on behind the scenes under David Tepper, maybe under Scott Fitterer, this is the least attractive job, the least attractive place to be at in the NFL. Mike mentioned it. We get the Falcons this weekend. The Falcons at Panthers. The Falcons are a 3-point road favorite. Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff. If I'm not mistaken, it might be a later kickoff now that I think about it. And it's just a typo on the screen.
It's a 1 o'clock.
Is it a 1 o'clock kickoff? Either of you guys think the Panthers can cover this 3-point spread?
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm
we're a
right there with you.
podcast people, but I mean, we can keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
Falcons have a lot to play for. Desmond Ridder had a good game this past week.
Yeah, he did.
Like he had a good game. He was like 300 some yards. He was like second in the NFL when it came to passing yards this week, and they still lost to the Bucks, which is really sad for the Falcons fans out there who are listening to a Panther podcast. Don't know who you are, but yeah, I do not see Carolina. I thought they could, after firing Frank Wright, I thought they could play for pride and beat the Bucks. They didn't. I thought they could play for pride and beat the Saints, and they didn't. What makes me think they're going to play for pride and beat the Falcons right now?
Shannon, what are your thoughts before we go to sign off here?
Again, Atlanta has a lot to play for. They have a chance to go get that playoff spot by winning the NFC South. I think Atlanta looks at this game as business as usual, and they handle biz.
Yeah, there's a 3-way tie at the top of the division, 6 and 7, between all 3 of the other teams in the NFC South, aside from the Carolina Panthers. You want to find Mike Davis? Go to Instagram @TRSR and @Drop the Mic Wrestling. Mike's getting back into the thick of things. He'll be back on both of those shows as he is here on the Cat Cave. We're glad to have Mike here. And if you want to go find me on social media, @Tapouts and TDs on Twitter, Facebook.com/Tapouts and Touchdowns. Make sure you go and follow the Facebook page as I am on my strive for the final 200 or so followers to getting my first 1,000 over on Tapouts and Touchdowns. Thanks, everybody, for joining. So until next week, you may now exit the Cat Cave, but make sure you listen to more content on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and more Carolina Panthers-themed podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, for Michael Davis, I'm Ryan Frick, and we'll see you next week right back here inside the Cat Cave.